Did you know one of the Wild West's most infamous duels didn't happen on the open range? Or even on a dusty street at high noon? It happened inside a crowded saloon, between two gamblers who once called each other friends. On April 5, 1879, inside Dodge City's Long Branch Saloon, the air filled with gun smoke, broken pride, and the sound of 6 pistols firing at near point-blank range. By the time the echoes faded, one man lay dead on the floor, another walked away free, and Dodge City would never forget the night it hosted the Last Duel. The year was 1879. Dodge City, Kansas was in its prime, the very heart of the frontier cattle trade. It wasn't called the Queen of the Cowtowns for nothing. By day, cowboys drove thousands of longhorns north from Texas. By night, the town came alive. Piano music spilling from saloon doors, poker chips clattering on tables, whiskey poured like water, and tempers running hot. The Long Branch Saloon was one of the busiest joints in town. Owned by Chalk Beeson and W.H. Harris, it was more than just a bar. It was a gambler's paradise. Card tables packed, laughter mingling with curses, and the faint rattle of spurs as men leaned back in chairs. If there was one place where reputations were made or destroyed in Dodge City, it was here. And it was here, beneath the flickering light of oil lamps, that 2 men set their fates on a collision course. First there was Frank Loving, better known as Cockeyed Frank. Born around 1860 in Missouri, Frank wasn't a lawman nor a cattleman. He was a gambler, pure and simple. He drifted into Dodge City in his late teens, making a living with cards and charm. Folks called him cockeyed not just because of his wandering eye, but because he never seemed to look directly at the trouble he was walking into. He was bold, fiery, and he had one thing most gamblers lacked: a young wife, Maddie, whom he genuinely adored. Then there was Levi Richardson. A buffalo hunter turned gambler, Richardson was cut from a rougher cloth. He came from Wisconsin, and by the late 1870s, had earned a reputation across Kansas as a heavy drinker and a man quick to quarrel. Some said he was mean by nature, others that whiskey made him meaner. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with a temper like a lit fuse. In a different world, these 2 men might have been allies. They played cards together, crossed paths in the saloons, maybe even shared laughs once. But in Dodge City, reputations were fragile things, and Richardson was about to trample over something Loving would not forgive. The trouble began, as it so often did, over a woman. Maddie Loving was just a teenager when she married Frank, but she carried herself with quiet strength. In a town where women often found themselves little more than decorations in saloons, Maddie held her ground but to Richardson she became an obsession. He began making advances, and some whispered, some spoken outright. Ignored them. Then came insults, muttered in the Long Branch when Loving was within earshot. Richardson wasn't just trying to steal another man's wife. He was trying to humiliate her husband in public. It all boiled over one evening in March of 1879, when the 2 men faced off in the street. Loving was unarmed. Richardson wasn't. Witnesses later recalled Richardson raising his voice, calling out, "I'll blow the guts out of you, you cockeyed son of a bitch." Loving backed away. He wasn't about to die on Front Street without a gun in his hand. But the challenge had been made. Pride was wounded. Dodge City could feel a storm brewing. For weeks afterward, the town buzzed with gossip. Cowboys and card sharps leaned over poker tables, whispering predictions. Who would draw first when the time came? Was Frank tough enough to stand against Levi? Would Richardson push it too far? By early April, the air inside the Long Branch felt like a powder keg. Bartenders poured drinks with wary eyes. Gamblers cast sidelong glances at the doors. And every time Richardson swaggered into the saloon, men stiffened, waiting for the moment sparks would fly. The showdown came on a Saturday night. It was April 5th, and the Long Branch was crowded. Cowboys with dust still clinging to their boots lounged at the bar. A piano man banged out a tune in the corner. Lamps flickered, shadows danced across the walls. Around 8 o'clock, Levi Richardson walked in. He wasn't here for cards, and he wasn't here for whiskey. He was looking for one man. He settled near the pot-bellied stove, drink in hand, scanning the room with hard eyes. Those who knew the feud quietly slipped their chairs back, giving him space. An hour later, Frank Loving entered. He spotted Richardson instantly. The tension was palpable. Witnesses said the saloon went quieter as the two men locked eyes. Richardson shifted his chair, making room for Loving to sit across from him. And, against all odds, Loving did. The two men leaned forward over the table. At first their voices were low, almost civil, but then the words grew sharper, louder. Richardson slammed his glass down. Loving's hand drifted toward his side. Finally, Richardson spat. "You wouldn't fight anything, you damn son of a bitch." Loving answered, steady and cold. "Try me and see." 6 words. That's all it took. Both men went for their pistols. The first flash lit the room, followed by the deafening crack of gunfire. In the smoke and chaos, patrons dove for cover. Poker chips scattered. The piano man stopped cold. Richardson fired 5 times in quick succession. Bullets shattered glasses, tore into the wooden stove, ricocheted off the floor. Loving returned fire with 6 shots of his own. At that distance, barely a few feet apart, it was less a gunfight than mutual destruction. When the smoke cleared, Levi Richardson staggered. He had taken bullets in the chest, the side, and his arm. He collapsed to the floor, groaning, his revolver slipping from his grasp. Loving stood, shaken, but mostly unhurt. 1 bullet had grazed his hand, but nothing more. The saloon was silent save for Richardson's labored breaths. Then came the heavy steps of lawmen. Marshal Charlie Bassett and Deputy Duffy burst through the doors. Richardson was dying. Loving was arrested on the spot. The coroner's inquest took place 2 days later on April 7th. Witnesses were called. Men who'd seen the insults, heard the threats, watched the pistols blaze. The verdict was clear. Frank Loving had acted in self-defense. He was released without charges. Richardson was buried, his name remembered only for the pride that killed him. Loving, on the other hand, walked free. But in Dodge City, freedom came with a price. Some said Loving had no choice, that Richardson forced his hand. Others whispered he'd gone too far, that perhaps his temper was hotter than he let on. Either way, the legend was sealed. Years later, when the Long Branch Saloon was torn down, workmen discovered bullet holes still lodged in the walls and stove. Physical scars of that night when 2 gamblers turned the place into a killing ground. It became one of Dodge City's defining legends. Not because it was the bloodiest gunfight. Others had higher body counts. Not because the men were the most famous. They weren't. But because it symbolized everything about the Old West. Pride, jealousy, honor, and the quick-draw justice that left no room for second chances. As for Frank Loving, Dodge City wasn't his last chapter. He drifted west, gambling in Trinidad, Colorado. But in 1882, just 3 years after Dodge City, Loving found himself in another saloon gunfight, this time with a man named John Allen. The bullets caught him. This time it was Frank Loving who went down. At only 21 years old, Cockeyed Frank's luck ran out. It was almost poetic, as if the echoes of Dodge City had finally caught up with him. And so, the story of the Last Duel in Dodge City isn't just about who drew fastest. It's about how fragile pride can be, how jealousy turns men into killers, and how the Wild West left no room for forgiveness once guns were drawn. On that April night, Levi Richardson died not just from bullets, but from the pride that refused to back down. And Frank Loving walked free, but haunted by the shadows of the Long Branch forever. If this tale of jealousy, pride, and gunpowder drew you in, don't forget to subscribe and join us again. Because the Wild West is full of stories just like this one, and next time we'll uncover what really happened to John Wesley Hardin. Stay tuned.